Hello, friends. On a cold night in November 1846, a young man in Boston, Albert Tirrell, entered a dimly lit boarding house where his mistress, Maria Bickford, lay asleep. Moments later, Maria was dead, her throat slit, her body set ablaze. Tirrell vanished into the darkness. When he was finally caught, his lawyer presented an argument so strange, it stunned the courtroom and changed criminal history forever. He claimed that Tirrell had killed Maria, while asleep. This would become the first known case in legal history where sleepwalking was used as a defense for murder. And it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 2 centuries, courts around the world would be shaken by similar cases, men and women who claimed they committed unspeakable crimes in their sleep. They were called automatons, people whose bodies acted without their conscious minds. From Victorian America to modern-day Canada, from superstition to neuroscience, this is the strange and unsettling history of the sleepwalking killer. Today, on Sculpted Grace, we trace this haunting phenomenon that blurs the line between dream and death. Part 1: A Murder in Boston. It was the 19th century, an age of superstition, medicine still primitive, and psychology barely born. Albert Tirrell was only 22 when he met Maria Bickford, a beautiful sex worker from Maine. They became lovers, and scandal followed them everywhere. When Maria tried to leave him, Tirrell's obsession turned dark. On October 27, 1846, the boarding house erupted in flames. Maria's throat had been slit from ear to ear. Tirrell disappeared. When he was captured, his lawyer, Rufus Choate, crafted one of the boldest defenses ever made. He said, Albert Tirrell was not awake when he killed Maria. He was sleepwalking. At that time, medical science barely understood sleep. But Choate brought in doctors who testified that some people could perform complex actions while asleep, even acts of violence. The jury listened, astonished. And then, they acquitted him. Albert Tirrell walked free. For the first time in history, a murder had been excused as the act of a sleeping mind. The sleepwalking killer was born. Part 2: The Science Behind the Shadow. To understand how anyone could kill while asleep, we need to understand sleep itself. Human sleep is divided into cycles: REM and non-REM. REM is when dreams happen, rapid eye movements, high brain activity, and vivid imagination. But sleepwalking happens during deep non-REM sleep, when the body is at rest and the conscious mind is shut down. During this phase, something strange can occur. The brain partially wakes up. The motor regions, those controlling movement, come online. While the frontal cortex, the seat of awareness, stays asleep. The result? A body that moves without a mind. People can get up, walk, cook, drive, and sometimes, commit acts of unimaginable violence. But here's what makes it terrifying. Sleepwalkers usually remember nothing the next morning. To them, it's as if their own body betrayed them in the night. Part 3: The Modern Sleepwalking Killer. Fast forward to Canada, 1987. A 23-year-old man named Kenneth Parks lived an ordinary life until it all changed one night in May. He was a kind husband, a father, and a devoted son-in-law. But his life had been spiraling: gambling debts, job loss, shame. On May 24, he fell asleep on his sofa while watching TV. Around 1:30 a.m., still asleep, he got into his car and drove 22 kilometers to his in-laws' home. He entered the house with a spare key. Minutes later, his mother-in-law lay dead, his father-in-law gravely injured. Blood-soaked and dazed, Parks then drove to a police station. He said, "I think I've killed 2 people." Doctors were baffled. He showed deep cuts on his hands but felt no pain. His brain scans revealed unusual sleep patterns. Experts testified that he was genuinely sleepwalking during the attack. In court, his lawyers argued that there was no intent, no awareness the mind had been asleep while the body acted. In 1988, Kenneth Parks was acquitted. The verdict shocked Canada and the world. Once again, a person who killed was declared innocent because he was asleep. Part 4, An Old Defense in a New Age. By now, science had advanced. EEGs could record brainwaves, psychology had matured. Yet, the question persisted. If someone commits murder while sleepwalking, are they truly innocent? Legal systems call this automatism, actions performed without conscious control. Courts divide automatism into 2 types. Insane automatism, where the cause is a mental disorder. Non-insane automatism, where the cause is external, like sleepwalking. If it's non-insane, the person can be acquitted. If insane, they can be confined to psychiatric care. But how do you prove what the mind was doing during the night? That's where the debate turns murky and moral. Part 5, The Science Grows Darker. Sleepwalking is not as rare as it seems. Studies show that nearly 7% of people will sleepwalk at least once in their lives. Among children, it's even more common. But in adults, it becomes dangerous. During deep non-REM sleep, the brain's inhibitory systems, the ones that stop you from acting out, can fail. And when stress, sleep deprivation, or genetics mix in, the result can be catastrophic. Recent studies reveal that sleepwalkers often have reduced activity in their sympathetic nervous system, the one controlling the fight or flight response, and an overactive parasympathetic system, the one for rest and digest. Their bodies may look calm, even as their subconscious brews chaos. Some scientists suggest a genetic link, a locus on chromosome 20q12q13.12 that may predispose families to sleepwalking. If both parents are sleepwalkers, the child has a 60% chance of inheriting the condition. Part 6, A Modern Case That Shocked America. In 1997, in Arizona, Scott Falter murdered his wife, Yarmila. 44 stab wounds. Then, he dragged her to the backyard pool and held her underwater. When police arrived, they found him calm, in pajamas. He claimed he was sleepwalking. Experts debated fiercely. Some said his behavior, changing clothes, hiding the knife, was too complex for a sleepwalker. Others insisted that prolonged, goal-directed behavior could occur during parasomnia. The jury didn't believe him. He was sentenced to life in prison. The contrast between Parks and Falter raised profound questions. If 2 men both claim unconsciousness, how do we decide which one to believe? Where does science end, and faith in human testimony begin? Part 7, The Indian Connection. This strange phenomenon isn't confined to the West. In 1957, in Tamil Nadu, a young mother named Papati Amal jumped into a well with her baby in her arms. She survived. Her baby didn't. When charged with murder, her lawyers claimed she was sleepwalking, unaware of what she'd done. At first, the lower court dismissed this argument and sentenced her to life imprisonment. But when the case reached the Madras High Court, the judges delivered a landmark judgment. If it can be proved beyond doubt that the accused was sleepwalking, then under Section 84 of the Indian Penal Code, it could be considered unsoundness of mind. This case cemented the idea that sleepwalking could serve as a valid defense even in Indian law. Part 8: When history repeats itself. Across the world, new cases kept surfacing, each one stranger than the last. In the 1960s, a Welshman named Brian Thomas strangled his wife during a holiday, claiming he thought she was an intruder. In the 2000s, a woman in London cooked an entire meal while asleep: eggs, sausage, even fries, and remembered nothing the next morning. Sleepwalking has many faces. Sometimes harmless, sometimes horrific. But every case carries the same haunting question: how much of what we do at night is really us? Part 9: The Science of the Night. To understand why people sleepwalk, scientists studied their brains through EEG scans. They found that during deep sleep, the frontal lobe, which controls judgment, is silent, while the motor cortex controlling movement lights up. It's like half the brain is awake, half asleep. And in this twilight state, reality and dream blur together. Triggers vary: stress, anxiety, sleep deprivation, alcohol, even medications. Some people sleepwalk after taking sedatives or antidepressants. Children may sleepwalk during fevers or when suffering from asthma. And yet, beneath all the science, one truth remains. The human mind is capable of extraordinary contradictions. The same brain that dreams can also destroy. Mid-roll promotion segment. Before we continue, friends, if you're fascinated by stories that blur the boundaries between mind and mystery, between the human brain and human behavior, then Sculpted Grace is where you belong. Here, we don't just tell stories, we carve meaning out of history. From the forgotten crimes of the past, to the science that explains our strangest instincts. Every week, we explore the elegance and chaos of the human condition. Subscribe to Sculpted Grace, and step with us into the gray space between the waking and the dreaming world. Now, let's return to the shadows of sleep. Part 10: Can science predict a sleepwalking killer? Modern neuroscience is trying to answer what once belonged to myth. Today, doctors can identify sleepwalking tendencies through polysomnography, overnight studies that track muscle tone, heart rate, and brain waves. But even with all the data, no one can predict when a person might act out a violent episode. That uncertainty is what terrifies people most. Imagine falling asleep next to someone and not knowing whether they might wake up as themselves, or as someone else entirely. Part 11: Courts and Conscience. Legal systems struggle with these cases because intent, the heart of all crime, vanishes. How do you convict a body whose mind was asleep? In Kenneth Parks's case, the evidence of sleepwalking was strong. In Scott Falter's, the premeditation seemed undeniable. Every judgment becomes a mirror reflecting how much we trust science or fear being deceived. One American judge once called the sleepwalking defense a quagmire of law, a place where truth and illusion dance in the dark. But courts also recognize the tragedy of genuine sufferers, those who never intended harm. Part 12, When the danger is themselves. For many sleepwalkers, the enemy isn't others, it's themselves. There are countless stories of people walking out of windows, off balconies, or into traffic, completely unaware. In June 2024, in Mumbai, a 19-year-old student named Mustafa Ibrahim Chinawala fell from the 6th floor while sleepwalking. He didn't survive. Such stories remind us that sleepwalking is not just a curiosity, it's a silent threat. That's why securing the environment, locking doors, adding safety grills, removing sharp objects can save lives. Sleepwalking isn't supernatural. It's neurological, a glitch in the delicate balance between body and mind. Part 13, The Genetic Curse. Imagine inheriting the possibility of violence not through upbringing, but through DNA. Studies have shown that families of sleepwalkers often carry the same genetic markers. If one parent is a sleepwalker, there's a 47% chance the child will be too. If both are, the probability rises above 60%. Science suggests that some of us may be born with thinner boundaries between sleep and wakefulness. Our ancestors called it possession or madness. Today, we call it parasomnia. But the mystery remains the same. Part 14, A Dance Between Law and Dream. When Tirrell walked free in 1846, newspapers called it a scandal. When Parks was acquitted in 1988, the world called it impossible. And when Falter was imprisoned in 1999, jurors said they didn't want to take that risk again. History doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. Each generation faces the same question. Should a man be punished for what his sleeping mind commands? Even now, some legal scholars argue that complete automatism should be treated as insanity. Others insist that sleep is a temporary state, not a disease. So, the debate goes on between mercy and justice, between science and fear. Part 15, Beyond the Myth. In folklore, sleepwalkers were once thought to be haunted by spirits, cursed by the moon, or trapped between worlds. The word lunatic itself comes from luna, the moon. But today, we know it's not the moon, it's the mind. Sleepwalking is the echo of evolution. A remnant of an ancient brain still learning to separate dream from deed. Perhaps that's why it fascinates us so deeply. Because it shows how fragile our sense of control really is. That beneath the calm surface of sleep lies a storm we barely understand. Part 16, The Final Reflection. From Albert Tirrell's smoky Boston room to Kenneth Parks's midnight drive across Ontario. The story of the sleepwalking killer is one long question whispered through time. How awake are we, really? Every night, billions of brains drift between consciousness and chaos. Most return safely. A few cross a line they never meant to cross. For the victims, it's tragedy. For science, it's mystery. For the law, it's an endless paradox. And for us, it's a reminder that even in our deepest sleep, we remain haunted by ourselves. Thank you for watching. This was the Sleepwalking Killer, a Sculpted Grace original. If you'd like to journey further into the hidden corners of human history and the human mind, subscribe, share, and join us in exploring the beautiful, dangerous dance between reason and shadow. Good night and sleep well.